On the day of the election, the new Pope Leo XIV, Robert Prevost, found a hidden message that would change everything. Following clues left by Pope Francis, age-old secrets hidden in the Vatican begin to emerge. A conspiracy to conceal the truth about our existence in the universe threatens to be revealed. Prepare for a journey of faith, courage, and cosmic revelations that will shake your beliefs. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, and comment where you're watching this incredible story from. White smoke rises above the Sistine Chapel. Thousands of faithful gathered in St. Peter's Square await with expectation, their eyes fixed on the small chimney from which the traditional signal emerges. A new era begins for the Catholic Church. On the balcony soon, the world will know the man chosen to guide over 1 billion faithful through the uncertain paths of the future. But what no one knows, what no one could imagine, is that in the private chambers of the Vatican, far from curious eyes and persistent cameras, a silent and disturbing discovery is about to change everything. While the world waits, Robert Prevost, now Pope Leo XIV, a 69-year-old man from the United States, finds himself alone for the first time since his election. His hands, still unaccustomed to the weight of the ring of the fisherman, tremble slightly. It's not just the weight of responsibility that makes his heart race. It's something more, something unexpected. The ring, an age-old symbol of the papacy, looks different under the golden light that penetrates the historic windows. Prevost examines it with curiosity and notices a small, almost imperceptible protrusion. His fingers, guided by an inexplicable intuition, press the right spot, and the unthinkable happens. A small cavity is revealed, hidden for centuries inside the papal symbol itself. What could this be? He murmurs to himself, as his eyes contemplate a tiny fragment of parchment, carefully folded and preserved inside the ring. With cautious fingers, he unfolds the fragile material. The handwriting, small but clear, is unmistakable. It belongs to Jorge Bergoglio, Pope Francis, who passed away just 17 days ago. The date at the top of the parchment confirms April 20th, 2025, the eve of his death. A final message, a secret entrusted only to the successor whom Francis would never know. To my successor, chosen by the Holy Spirit to bear not only the visible burden of the Church, but also its best-kept secret. Not all that glitters in the Vatican is gold, nor has all truth been revealed. Follow this path only if you are prepared to question everything. The truth awaits in the shadows of the Vatican's secret archives. Galileo section, manuscript 1633X. The future of faith depends on the courage to face our past. May God illuminate your decision. Robert Prevost felt the weight of these words as if they were physical, pressing down on his shoulders already bowed by his newly acquired responsibility. Why would Francis choose this secret method, this crucial moment, to reveal something so seemingly dark? What could be so important, so dangerous, that it needed to be transmitted in this way? The distant sounds of the jubilant crowd in St. Peter's Square created a surreal contrast with the heavy silence of the chamber. In a few minutes, he was scheduled to appear on the balcony for his first apostolic blessing. The world waited for words of hope, for gestures of continuity. But within his heart, a storm was brewing. As he prepared to don the papal vestments, aided by silent and reverent assistants, his mind worked incessantly. Memories of conversations with Francis over the years, fragments of enigmatic comments that at the time seemed merely the philosophical reflections of a wise man, now began to form a disturbing pattern. "Holiness, are you all right?" his private secretary asked, noticing the new pontiff's paleness and distant gaze. "Yes, just absorbing the magnitude of this moment," he replied, hiding the parchment in his sleeve. On the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica, under the gaze of millions through the lenses of global cameras, Pope Leo XIV raised his hands in blessing. His words were warm, his presence magnetic. No one could suspect the turmoil within him, the question echoing incessantly. What did Francis mean? What is the secret that could shake the foundations of faith? Urbi et Orbi, to the city and to the world, he proclaimed the traditional blessing, but his words carried a subtext that only he understood. There were more truths to be revealed, horizons to be explored, revelations awaiting beyond the limits of the known. Night fell over Rome, and while the world continued celebrating, the Pope faced his first crucial decision: ignore the message and maintain the stability of the Church, or follow the path indicated by his predecessor and venture into the unknown. The Vatican's secret archives, a repository of 2 millennia of history, held millions of documents on its shelves. Some had never been seen by modern eyes. Others, like the mysterious manuscript 1633X, seemed to have been deliberately hidden, even within this sanctuary of knowledge. The following morning, before the rising sun even touched the domes of Rome, Pope Leo XIV walked through the silent corridors of the Vatican. He dismissed his security, claiming the need for solitary prayer, a privilege even the pontiff didn't usually exercise. But today was no ordinary day. The key to the archives weighed in his hand like lead. Unrestricted access was one of the few absolute privileges of the office he now held. No one would question his presence. No one would dare interrogate his intentions. The lights turned on automatically as he advanced through the endless corridors of shelves. Galileo section, a name that alone carried the weight of the troubled history between science and faith. Galileo Galilei, the astronomer who dared to challenge the geocentric view of the universe and paid the price. His fingers ran along the yellowed labels until he found what he was looking for. Manuscript 1633X, a cryptic designation for a volume that, surprisingly, looked nothing like the ancient documents around it. It was a modern folder, sealed with the papal coat of arms, the coat of arms of Francis. Leo XIV's heart raced. It wasn't a medieval document, but something compiled by his immediate predecessor. With trembling hands, he broke the seal and opened the folder. The first page contained only a quote: "The truth will set you free," John 8:32, followed by a handwritten note from Francis. "But first it may cause great pain. Be prepared, my brother." The following pages revealed digitized documents from various eras, from medieval parchments to modern scientific reports, photos of old telescopes hidden in remote monasteries, correspondence between previous popes and astronomers throughout the centuries, and, most disturbingly, confidential reports from modern observatories secretly funded by the Vatican. The revelation gradually took shape. Meticulously compiled evidence suggesting that for decades, perhaps centuries, the Holy See had possessed knowledge about the existence of other civilizations beyond the stars. Knowledge guarded, suppressed, hidden from the faithful and the world. "It can't be true," Leo XIV murmured, but the evidence before his eyes was irrefutable. The last document in the folder was a personal letter from Francis, written in the trembling hand of his final days. "My successor, whoever you are, forgive me for this burden. During my papacy, the evidence became too strong to ignore. Our astronomical observations confirmed what many of my predecessors suspected but feared to confront. We are not alone in divine creation. The great question now is, how does this truth align with our theology? How can we reconcile the Word of God with this new cosmic reality?" I prayed for guidance, but I understood that this decision should not be mine alone. The time to reveal has come, but the exact moment and method, this will be your cross to bear. May the Holy Spirit guide you where my courage failed. The weight of these words made the Pope lean against the shelves. The implication was clear. Francis had decided the Church could no longer hide this knowledge, but he died before he could act. Now, Leo XIV faced an impossible choice. Revealing this secret could forever transform human understanding of the cosmos and divine creation, or it could destroy the faith of millions, destabilizing an institution that had survived 2 millennia. As he contemplated the monumental consequences, he heard approaching footsteps, quick, decisive. He didn't have time to close the folder when the imposing figure of Cardinal Alessandro Ricci, head of the Vatican's financial administration, appeared in the illuminated corridor. "Holiness, I didn't expect to find you here." The Italian cardinal's voice echoed among the shelves, his words polite, but his eyes fixed on the open folder in the Pope's hands. "I'm just exploring the treasures of our history," Leo XIV tried to sound casual, but he immediately saw it in the other man's eyes. Ricci knew what he had found. "I see Francis left his message." The cardinal approached, his face a mask of studied concern. "Holiness, allow me to offer some context for what you are seeing. Some theories may seem convincing when isolated, but this goes beyond theories. Doesn't it, Eminence?" Leo XIV interrupted, carefully studying the cardinal's reaction. "These are observational data, scientific reports, official correspondence, compiled by Francis himself." A tense silence settled between the two men. Finally, Ricci sighed. "Holiness, there is certain knowledge that the Church has deemed prudent to keep reserved, not out of fear or dishonesty, but out of pastoral responsibility. Imagine the impact." "The impact of what, exactly?" the Pope pressed, his voice gaining firmness. "Of knowing that God created other beings besides us? That the universe is even vaster and more wonderful than we teach? The impact on the faith of the simple, Holiness. On the stability of the Church. On the scriptures that do not explicitly mention." Ricci hesitated. "Other worlds, other intelligent creatures?" Leo XIV finished. "The scriptures also don't explicitly mention microbes or galaxies, Cardinal. But we accept their existence without a theological crisis. It's different, and you know it." Ricci's voice hardened. "There are other factors to consider. Political alliances, research funding, agreements with governments. The Church is not just faith, holiness, but also an institution with earthly responsibilities." There it was, the veiled admission that more was at stake than just theology. Power, control, alliances. The new pope realized he was stepping into a minefield more complex than he had imagined. Who else knows about this? A very restricted circle. Some cardinals, directors of our observatories. Sister Mary Adams, the chief librarian, cataloged the documents for Francis, but she doesn't know the full content. Ricci paused significantly. "And now, Your Holiness. And what did Francis intend to do?" The cardinal hesitated again, choosing his words carefully. In his final months, he seemed restless. He spoke of preparing the faithful for new revelations. Many of us feared he was considering rash steps. And then he died. The words hung in the air like an unvoiced accusation. A stroke followed by heart failure, as officially announced. Ricci held the Pope's gaze without hesitation. "Holiness, I am not here to dictate your actions, only to offer perspective. Generations of church leaders preserved this knowledge for a reason. Any revelation would need to be carefully planned, over years, perhaps decades." Pope Leo XIV slowly closed the folder, his mind processing the implications, the layers of complexity. "I appreciate your frankness, Cardinal Ricci. I will reflect on all this in prayer." "Of course, Holiness. We are all at your service." Ricci bowed respectfully, but his eyes remained vigilant. "Allow me to escort you back to your chambers. There are urgent administrative matters that require your attention." The message was clear. Return to your official duties. Leave the secrets where they are. The world turns as it has always turned. "Actually, I would like to stay alone a little longer." The Pope's tone left no room for argument. "I have much to reflect on before my first official address tomorrow." The cardinal backed away, unable to insist without appearing disrespectful. "As you wish, Holiness. I will be available when you need me." With a final bow, he withdrew down the corridor, his footsteps echoing in the vastness of the archives. As soon as he found himself alone again, Leo XIV took a deep breath. The power game had just begun, and he barely knew the rules or the players. But one thing was certain. Francis had entrusted this truth to him for a reason, and he could not simply ignore it. His eyes wandered over the endless shelves of the archives. How many other secrets slept here, awaiting the right moment to awaken? And who decided when that moment arrived? Before leaving, he carefully tucked the folder under his papal vestments. He needed allies, information, time to fully understand what was at stake. But something told him that time was exactly what he didn't have. As he walked through the centuries-old corridors of the Vatican, newly illuminated by the morning sun, he felt eyes following him, curious staff, speculative cardinals, watchful Swiss guard, all wondering what kind of pope he would be. Conservative or progressive, diplomatic or provocative. None of them imagined that the real question might be much deeper. Would he be the pope who would reveal to the world that we are not alone in the universe? Turning a corner, he almost collided with a female figure, a middle-aged nun with intellectual glasses and an upright posture. "Forgive me, Holiness," she exclaimed, surprised. "It's my fault, I was distracted." He smiled, noticing the identification badge. Sister Mary Adams, Chief Librarian. The same one mentioned by Ricci as the person who cataloged the documents for Francis. Their eyes met for a moment, long enough for him to notice something in her gaze. Knowledge, complicity. Before he could decide, she made a quick bow and went on her way, but not without first murmuring, "The heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork." Psalm 19:1. Psalm 19. A seemingly innocent reference, but the context in the moment made the Pope wonder. Was it a message, a sign, or just a coincidence? Back in his chambers, he found a young priest, organizing his documents for the day's audiences. Father Michael Johnson, an amateur astronomer and translator, sent specially for the conclave. His respectful but intensely curious gaze reminded Leo XIV of his own youth, the thirst for knowledge, the restless faith that seeks understanding. "Father Michael, can I trust your absolute discretion?" The words came out before he could fully consider them. It was imprudent, perhaps even dangerous, but his instinct told him he needed someone outside the traditional power structures of the Vatican. The young priest straightened his posture, surprised by the direct approach. "Of course, Holiness. Besides sacramental confidentiality, I have the deepest respect for your trust." The Pope carefully considered his next moves. "You have a background in astronomy, correct?" "Yes, Holiness. Besides theology, I have a doctorate in astrophysics. My thesis was on the reconciliation between modern astronomical discoveries and theological cosmology." The priest seemed confused, but intrigued by the direction of the conversation. "And what if I told you that this reconciliation might be more necessary and more challenging than you imagine?" The young priest's eyes lit up with intellectual curiosity. "I would say that is exactly why I chose to study both fields, Holiness." Leo XIV felt a cautious relief. Perhaps he had found his first ally on this uncertain journey. "Father Michael, I would like you to study something for me, with complete discretion." From the sleeve of his robe, he withdrew not the full folder, that would be too risky, but a few selected pages, recent observational data, without context revealing the origin or the full implications. "Analyze this astronomical data. Tell me what it means scientifically speaking. Don't show it to anyone, don't discuss it with anyone." He paused significantly. "And if anyone asks you about this conversation, we were just discussing my first homily." Michael received the papers with reverence and curiosity. "When will you need my conclusions, Holiness?" "Tomorrow morning, before my first official address." The Pope knew it was a tight deadline, but he also knew he couldn't postpone important decisions indefinitely. The Catholic world, and perhaps the entire world, awaited his first official words as leader of the Church. As the young priest withdrew, Leo XIV turned his attention to the immediate responsibilities of the papacy. Audiences, administrative decisions, liturgical preparations. But in every interaction, every conversation, he remained vigilant, observing who showed genuine loyalty and who seemed to have hidden agendas. During a meeting with representatives of the Catholic press, he carefully chose his words when discussing his vision for the Church. "We must be ready to expand our horizons," he said, observing the reactions attentively. Divine revelation did not cease with the last pages of the Bible. God continues to reveal himself through the beauty and complexity of his creation. Most nodded in agreement with what seemed like mere spiritual rhetoric. But he noticed that Cardinal Ricci, present at the back of the room, narrowed his eyes slightly. The message, though subtle, had not gone unnoticed by him. As night fell, when he finally found himself alone again, Leo XIV knelt in his private chapel. Prayer had always been his refuge, his strength. But tonight the words came with difficulty. "Lord," he murmured in the gloom lit only by votive candles, "guide me on this uncertain path. If it is your will that these truths come to light, give me the strength to be your instrument. If I must proceed with caution, show me the way." The silence that followed felt heavier than ever. For a fleeting moment he felt an overwhelming loneliness, the weight of a decision that would affect countless lives, a responsibility no man should bear alone. Then, like a whisper, he remembered Christ's words to the apostles, "I still have many things to say to you, but you cannot bear them now." John 16:12. The implications of the passage struck him with new force. Christ himself recognized that certain truths could only be revealed when humanity was ready to receive them. Was the world ready now? Was the church ready? A soft knock on the door interrupted his contemplation. It was Father Michael, pale and visibly agitated. "Forgive me for interrupting your prayer, Holiness, but it's urgent." The Pope stood up, noticing the intensity in the young priest's eyes. "Speak, son. The data you gave me." Michael hesitated, as if the words were too difficult to pronounce. "They confirm observations I myself made at the observatory in Arizona. They are signs of artificial structures, not natural phenomena." His voice dropped to almost a whisper. "On a specific star, 40 light-years from Earth." The gravity of the confirmation hit Leo XIV like a physical wave. It wasn't just a theory, not just an abstract theological possibility. It was real, scientifically verifiable. And now, two independent people had reached the same conclusion. "There's more," Michael continued, his gaze avoiding the Pope's directly. "While I was analyzing the data, Sister Mary found me. She knows about this. She said Francis entrusted her with the preservation of these documents." "And did she say anything else?" the Pope asked, suddenly alert. Michael nodded, swallowing. "Art. She said she needs to speak with you urgently, that there is a prophecy, an ancient prediction preserved by a monastic order in New Mexico. My order." He finally looked directly into the Pope's eyes. "A prophecy that says, when the shepherd comes from the new world, the stars shall reveal their secrets." The silence that followed was almost tangible, as if time itself held its breath to allow the magnitude of these words to be absorbed. "Cardinal Ricci is looking for her," Michael added quickly. "He's mobilized the Swiss Guard to secure certain sectors of the Vatican. She's hiding in the old passage behind the Pauline Chapel." Leo XIV felt the tension mounting, time narrowing. "Take me to her, now." Through silent corridors and little-known passages, the Pope and the young priest moved like shadows, avoiding the guards and night staff. Michael seemed surprisingly familiar with the Vatican's secret paths for someone so recently arrived. "I studied Vatican architecture as a hobby," he explained, noticing the Pope's questioning look. "The old blueprints, the builder's diaries, the layers of history in this place always fascinated me." Finally, they reached a seemingly solid panel behind a rarely used confessional on the side of the Pauline Chapel. With precise movements, Michael pressed specific points on the intricate wood carving, and the panel moved silently, revealing a narrow passage. "This way, Holiness." The passage led them to a circular chamber, lit by old electric lamps installed decades ago, which seemed incongruous with the medieval architecture of the space. The walls were covered with astronomical symbols and texts in various ancient languages. In the center, a magnificently preserved old telescope pointed towards an opening in the ceiling that allowed a view of a small segment of the night sky. Sister Mary waited there, surrounded by documents methodically spread on the stone floor. Seeing the Pope, she quickly knelt. "Rise, sister," he said gently. "I believe there is little time for formalities." She rose, her eyes revealing a mixture of fear and determination. "Holiness, forgive me for this irregular approach, but I fear we are in grave danger. Cardinal Ricci is not just a zealous administrator. He leads a faction within the Church dedicated to suppressing this knowledge at any cost." "Why?" the Pope asked. "What do they fear so much?" It's not just fear, Holiness, it's power. Mary approached the telescope, adjusting it slightly. This secret observatory was built during the Renaissance. For centuries, the Church kept astronomers, observing the heavens in secret, even while publicly resisting heliocentric theories and other discoveries. Knowledge is power, Michael murmured, understanding. Exactly. Mary pointed to specific documents. These are records of communications with governments, space agencies, prominent scientists. The Vatican has been central to the coordinated suppression of this knowledge, not just for theological reasons, but due to political and economic agreements dating back decades. Leo XIV examined the documents with growing dismay. Names of world leaders, powerful corporations, enormous financial sums, all interconnected in a complex web of secrets and influence. Francis discovered this gradually, Mary continued. It started as a theological investigation. He wanted to reconcile faith with the possibility of extraterrestrial life. But the more he investigated, the more he uncovered this conspiracy. And he decided to reveal everything, the Pope concluded. Yes, in his final months he was carefully preparing the ground. His homilies began to include subtle references to the vastness of divine creation, to the possibility of other flocks mentioned in the scriptures. She hesitated. Then he suddenly fell ill. The implication hung in the air, too terrible to be voiced directly. The prophecy, Michael interrupted, breaking the tense silence. Tell the Holy Father about the prophecy. Mary nodded, turning to a particularly old manuscript. This prediction was recorded in the 16th century by a Benedictine monk who was also an astronomer. It was secretly preserved by contemplative orders in the New World, primarily in New Mexico, where Father Michael was initiated into their mysteries. She read the ancient words, "When the shepherd comes from the New World, the stars shall reveal their secrets. Faith and science shall unite again, and humanity shall face its true nature in the cosmic mirror of divine creation." The weight of the words seemed to make the air in the chamber denser, harder to breathe. "And you believe that I am this shepherd?" Leo XIV asked, his voice barely a whisper. "You come from the New World, the United States," Mary replied. "And you arrived precisely when our astronomical observations are revealing indisputable signs. The confluence. Is it extraordinary? Coincidence or divine providence?" The Pope murmured, more to himself than to the others. "When so many lines converge," Michael said, "I begin to doubt the existence of coincidences." A distant noise interrupted the conversation. Footsteps, voices, the unmistakable metallic sound of weapons being readied. "They've found us," Mary whispered, fear evident in her voice. "Ricci must have monitored your movements." "Is there another way out?" the Pope asked urgently. Michael pointed to an almost invisible passage behind a dusty tapestry. "It leads to the gardens. We can scatter there." "You go," Leo XIV ordered. "I will face them." "Holiness, no," Mary protested. "If they realize how much you already know." "I am the Pope," he interrupted with surprising firmness. "Not even Ricci would dare act directly against me. You two are more vulnerable. You must preserve yourselves so that the truth survives, no matter what happens to me." The footsteps were approaching. There was no time for arguments. "Take the essential documents," the Pope instructed Mary. "Michael, protect her. We will meet tomorrow before my homily, God willing." With painful hesitation, the two obeyed, disappearing through the secret passage while Leo XIV positioned himself with dignity in the center of the chamber, awaiting his visitors. The panel burst open violently, and armed Swiss guard flooded the space, followed by the imposing figure of Cardinal Ricci. "Holiness," the cardinal exclaimed, feigning surprise and concern. "Thank God we found you. We feared for your safety." "There's no need for theatrics, Eminence." The Pope's tone was calm but cutting. "I am perfectly safe, as you can see, just exploring our history." Ricci's eyes quickly swept the chamber, noting signs of others' recent presence, removed documents. "This area is restricted, Holiness. There are structural risks. Allow us to escort you back to your chambers." Curious, Leo XIV replied, his voice gaining confidence. A pope, restricted in his own home. Who exactly sets these restrictions, Cardinal? A tense silence settled. The guards seemed uncomfortable, uncertain how to proceed when faced with this tension between authorities. Holiness, Ricci lowered his voice, approaching. There are sensitive matters at stake. Agreements, alliances, commitments made over decades. The stability of the Church. The Church has survived persecutions, schisms, wars, and scandals, the Pope interrupted. It will survive the truth. Cardinal, what concerns me is whether it will survive its absence. Ricci's gaze hardened. You are being manipulated, Holiness. The librarian, the young priest. They don't understand the full ramifications. The research funds we would lose, the diplomatic agreements that would be compromised, and your position, your power. They would also be compromised, I suppose. Ricci recoiled as if physically struck. For a moment, his mask of concern slipped, revealing something colder and more calculating. This is an extraordinary situation, Holiness. It will require extraordinary consultants. I strongly suggest an emergency meeting with certain cardinals who are familiar with these matters. The veiled threat was clear. Institutional control, limiting the Pope's movements and decisions by a committee of consultants. An attempt to neutralize his authority without the scandal of a direct confrontation. Indeed, Cardinal, a meeting is precisely what we need. Leo XIV smiled serenely. I will convene the full College of Cardinals for tomorrow after my first public homily. All the cardinals, not just your selected associates. Ricci's expression could not hide his alarm. That would be hasty, Holiness. There are protocols, preparations. Protocols serve the Church, Cardinal, not the other way around. Now, if you'll excuse me, I need to prepare my address. With unwavering dignity, the Pope walked towards the exit, passing the guards who instinctively stepped back, allowing him passage. At the door, he turned one last time. Pray for guidance tonight, Eminence. We will all need it in the days to come. As he walked through the corridors back to his chambers, escorted at a distance by the visibly uncomfortable Swiss guard, Leo XIV felt a growing clarity. The pieces were starting to fit together. Francis's enigmatic illusions over the years, his growing determination in his final months, his sudden and convenient death. In his chambers, he knelt again to pray, but this time with renewed purpose. The decision was made. Tomorrow, in his first official homily as Pope, he would begin the process of preparing the faithful for a revelation that would transform not only the Church, but potentially all of humanity. The hours of the night passed slowly. He wrote and rewrote his address, weighing every word, every implication. He couldn't reveal everything at once. It would be unwise, perhaps even dangerous. But he could plant the seeds, begin to prepare the ground for what was to come. As the sun finally began to rise over the eternal city, Pope Leo XIV finished his text. He wasn't sure if Mary and Michael had managed to escape, if they would be present to support him. But regardless, he knew he couldn't back down now. He, dressed in the papal vestments, each layer heavy with symbolic meaning accumulated over the centuries. The weight of the vestments reflected the weight of the responsibility he carried, not just as the leader of a millennium-old institution, but as the potential herald of a new era in human understanding. St. Peter's Basilica was packed. Faithful from all over the world, dignitaries, clergy, journalists, all awaited the new Pope's first official words. Cameras broadcast live to billions of global viewers. Never before had such a vast audience been simultaneously focused on a single moment, a single messenger. In the front pews, Cardinal Ricci watched with calculated intensity, surrounded by strategically positioned allies. Discreetly, Leo XIV scanned the crowd for any sign of Mary or Michael. He didn't see them, but he had faith they were safe, preparing the next step of this extraordinary journey. When he finally ascended to the pulpit, a reverent silence fell over the basilica. Brothers and sisters in Christ, sons and daughters of God, he began, his voice surprisingly strong and clear. We live in a time of unprecedented wonders and challenges. Humanity extends its reach to the stars, unravels the secrets of the atom, maps the very code of life. And in every discovery, in every boundary crossed, we find not the end of faith, but an invitation to deepen it. His words flowed with increasing confidence as he observed the reactions, the assent of some, the discomfort of others. In the first pages of Genesis, we read that God created the heavens and the earth. But what are these heavens that he created truly? For centuries, we imagined a canopy above our heads. Today, we know they are billions of galaxies, each with billions of stars, many with planets orbiting them, in a cosmos of almost incomprehensible vastness. He paused strategically, observing Cardinal Ricci, who remained impassive but visibly tense. It would be presumption, no, it would be arrogance, to suppose that among all this immensity, God chose to create intelligent life only on our small planet. The scriptures tell us that God created man in his own image and likeness. But would those same scriptures limit divine creativity to a single expression of that image? A murmur ran through the congregation. These were not empty words or safe theological abstractions. It was a direct challenge to fundamental assumptions. Christ told us, "In my Father's house are many rooms." John 14:2. For centuries, we interpreted this passage as a promise of heaven for the faithful. But what if it is also a clue about the true vastness of creation? The murmur grew louder. Some cardinals exchanged worried glances. Ricci whispered urgently with an assistant. "The Church has always had a complex relationship with science," the Pope continued, his voice gaining strength. "In our best moments, we were patrons of knowledge. In our worst, we feared truths that seemed to challenge our limited understandings of the scriptures. Today, we find ourselves at that crossroads again." Suddenly, he noticed movement at the side of the basilica. Mary and Michael, discreetly, escorted by an elderly priest he recognized as an astronomer from the official Vatican observatory. They were safe. Hope swelled in his heart. In the coming months and years, it is my intention that the Catholic Church reclaim its rightful place as a bridge between faith and knowledge. Let us embrace without fear the discoveries of science, recognizing that every truth revealed about the universe is also a revelation about its creator. He saw the relief on Mary's face, the hopeful smile of Michael. He also saw the barely contained fury of Ricci, who now understood that the new pope would not be easily controlled or silenced. To begin this process, I announce today the formation of a new commission, Faith and Science. This commission will bring together theologians, scientists, philosophers, and spiritual leaders to explore the theological implications of the latest scientific discoveries, especially in the field of astronomy. A collective whisper ran through the basilica. It was a bold move, yet presented in a way that seemed a natural continuation of the Church's tradition of engagement with knowledge. "Truth does not fear investigation," Leo XIV declared, nearing his conclusion. "Authentic faith does not tremble before new discoveries. For as St. Augustine wrote, 'Let us hear and understand. If they show me anything in the scriptures which appears contrary to truth, I will not hesitate to say that either the text is corrupt, or the translator did not grasp the meaning, or I myself have not understood it.'" The cameras continued broadcasting his words to the world as the seed of truth was planted, not as a shocking revelation, but as an invitation to a journey of discovery, a journey that he knew would eventually lead to the greatest revelation in human history, that we are not alone in God's vast creation. In the days to come, he concluded with serene authority, I invite all the faithful to lift their eyes to the heavens with a renewed sense of wonder. For as the psalmist says, the heavens declare the glory of God, and the sky above proclaims his handiwork. Psalm 19:1. And perhaps, brothers and sisters, those divine hands have created even more wonders than we ever dared to imagine. The silence that followed his final words soon gave way to hesitant applause, which grew in volume and conviction. Many in the congregation did not fully understand the implications of what they had just heard, but they instinctively felt they had witnessed something significant, the first step of a transformative journey. As he descended from the pulpit, Leo XIV's gaze briefly met that of Mary and Michael. A silent understanding passed between them. The work had only just begun. The challenges ahead would be immense. Ricci and his allies would fight with all their might to maintain the status quo, to protect their power and their secrets. But today, a door had been opened that could no longer be completely closed. A light had begun to shine in the secular shadows, and in the new pope's heart, a certainty grew. Francis had chosen his successor well. The truth, finally, had found its messenger. As he walked down the central aisle of St. Peter's Basilica, blessing the faithful who reached out to touch him, he felt an inner warmth he recognized as the presence of the Holy Spirit. This was not just his mission. It was the next stage in the Church's long journey through human history. A journey that now extended beyond earth, beyond the familiar, towards a deeper and broader understanding of divine creation. The weight on his shoulders remained, but now it was carried with purpose and clarity. The path ahead would be difficult, dangerous, full of obstacles, but it was the right path, the only path. For the truth, as promised in the Scriptures, would finally begin to set free not only the Church, but all of humanity.